The history of geometric mathematics is our next lesson in geometry, but let's take a minute and study first. Mathematics involves an interaction between blank ideas of our mind and blank things in the world. Okay, abstract and concrete. What are the two very basic categories of mathematics? Pure mathematics and applied mathematics. When we are thinking mathematically, activities are taking place in two realms. What are those two realms? Okay, the real world realm and the realm of our mind. When we think mathematically, there is a rapid blank between the real world and the realm of ideas. There's a rapid seesawing. Pure mathematicians are interested in the blank of mathematical systems. Okay, the abstractions. Applied mathematicians are interested in the problems and events of the present, true or false. True. Using symbols linked together by reason and logic that have a common meaning between people is how we blank. Communicate. Since we are created in the image of God, we have the capacity to blank and blank. Think and reason. We are to be blank of God's creation. Stewards. Man has converted blank, involving magnitudes and relationships between the figures and forms we see in creation, patterns. Man has converted patterns we see in creation into a blank that enables us to communicate with others. Language. True or false? God gave a directive to mankind. True. True or false? God made creation and it glorifies Him. True. True or false? God made you to glorify Himself. True. Genesis 1:1 and Revelations 4:11 describe the fact that God what? God made creation and it glorifies Him. According to the Bible, we are to glorify God, subdue the earth, and rule over His creation. True or false? True. Since we can think and reason, men have invented and created blank and blank. Language and abstractions. What has mathematics become to mankind? tool. Psalm 19 specifies what? The heavens declare the glory of God. The connection between man and creation discussed in this section is the tool called mathematics. Okay, if there's any of that you didn't know, I want you to stop the tape and play it again and study it until you know it before you do this next lesson. Okay, today's lesson is called The History of Geometric Mathematics. Our goals are to recognize contributions of past mathematicians and interpret the significance of major mathematical discoveries. Go ahead and get your notes. Do not go to a new page. I just want you to skip a space, write today's dates. This is called The History of Geometric Mathematics. History of Geometric Mathematics. I'm just going to put math. The history of geometric mathematics is the story of man's development of thinking and communicating mathematical patterns. The nature of mathematics, and more specifically geometry, can be observed as the development of man's thinking and his ability to create abstract symbols to represent concrete things. Each spring in ancient Egypt, this is 2,000 years before Christ, the river Nile would overflow its banks, destroying landmarks. Because the Egyptians paid a tax on their land, he asked the Pharaoh to decrease their taxes for the loss due to the river. The surveyors of the time had the duty of restoring the markers and remeasuring the land. With a crew of 3 or 4 men, they would take a piece of rope and tie 13 knots that were the same distance apart. When the first and 13th knot was connected, the crew would stretch it out to form a rather accurate 90-degree angle. These crews became known as the rope stretchers. Their technique was a simple and useful way to create right angles and replace boundaries. This is where most mathematicians believe the name geometry was first developed from the word geo, which means the earth, and meter, which means to measure. Thus, we get the word geometry, which means to measure the earth. Okay, so it says 2000 BC in Egypt. It says the Nile River would overflow its banks, and when it did, it destroyed landmarks. Overflowed, destroying landmarks. Okay. The Egyptians wanted their taxes lowered because the land was destroyed because of the Nile River. So the Egyptians asked Pharaoh to reduce taxes because their land was destroyed. Let's talk about rope stretchers. And what the rope stretchers would do, it said it was a crew of 3 or 4 men. 3 or 4 men They would take a piece of rope and tie 13 knots the same distance apart. Tie 13 knots in a piece of rope. And remember, they're the same distance apart. We said that in 2000 BC, in Egypt, the Nile River overflowed, destroying landmarks. So the Egyptians asked Pharaoh to